John Alec Entwistle was born on the 9th of October 1944 in Chiswick, which is now part of London. He was an only child. His father Herbert, who died in 2003 and played the trumpet, and his mother Maud played the piano. His parents' marriage failed soon after he was born, and he was mostly raised by his mother at his grandparents' house in South Acton. Divorce was uncommon in the 1940s, and this contributed to Entwistle becoming reserved and socializing little. His musical career began at age 7 when he started taking piano lessons. He did not enjoy the experience, and after joining Acton County Grammar School, aged 11 switched to the trumpet, moving to the French horn when he joined the Middlesex Schools Symphony Orchestra. He met Pete Townshend in the second year of school, and the two formed a trad jazz band, the Confederates. The group only played one gig together before they decided that rock and roll was a more attractive prospect. Entwistle in particular was having difficulty hearing his trumpet with rock bands, and decided to switch to playing guitar. But due to his large fingers and also his fondness for the low guitar tones of Duane Eddy, he decided to take up the bass instead. He made his own instrument at home and soon attracted the attention of Roger Daltrey, who had been in the year above Entwistle at Acton County, but had been expelled, and was working as an electrician's mate. Daltrey was aware of Entwistle from school and asked him to join as a bassist for his band the Detours. After joining the Detours, Entwistle played a major role in encouraging Pete Townshend's budding talent on the guitar and insisting that Townshend be admitted into the band as well. At this point, the band consisted of Entwistle, Townshend, and drummer Doug Sandom, a semi-professional player who was several years older than the others. Daltrey relinquished the role of guitarist to Townshend in 1963, instead becoming frontman and lead vocalist. The band considered several changes of name, finally settling on the name The Who while Entwistle was still working as a tax clerk. When the band decided that the blonde Daltrey needed to stand out more from the others, Entwistle dyed his naturally light brown hair black, and it remained so until the early 1980s. Around 1963, Entwistle played in a London band called The Initials for a short while. The band broke up when a planned resident engagement in Spain fell through. Entwistle picked up 2 nicknames during his career as a musician. He was nicknamed the Ox because of his strong constitution and seeming ability to eat, drink, or do more than the rest of them, and he was also later nicknamed Thunderfingers. Bill Wyman, bassist for the Rolling Stones, described him as the quietest man in private but the loudest man on stage. Entwistle was one of the first to make use of Marshall stacks in an attempt to hear himself over the noise of his band members, who famously leapt and moved about on the stage, with Townshend and Keith Moon smashing their instruments on numerous occasions. Townshend later remarked that Entwistle started using Marshall amplification to hear himself over Moon's rapid-fire drumming style, and Townshend himself also had to use them just to be heard over Entwistle. They both continued expanding and experimenting with their rigs, until they were both using twin stacks with new experimental prototype 200-watt amps, at a time when most bands used 50 to 100-watt amplifiers with single cabinets. All of this quickly gained the Who a reputation for being the loudest band on the planet. They reached 126 decibels at a 1976 concert in London, listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the loudest rock concert in history. The band had a strong influence at the time on their contemporaries' choice of equipment, with Cream and the Jimi Hendrix Experience both following suit. Although they pioneered and directly contributed to the development of the classic Marshall sound, they only used Marshall equipment for a few years. Entwistle eventually switched to using a Sound City rig, with Townshend later following suit. Townshend points out that Jimi Hendrix, their new label mate, was influenced beyond just the band's volume. Both Entwistle and Townshend had begun experimenting with feedback from the amplifiers in the mid-1960s, and Hendrix did not begin destroying his instruments until after he had witnessed The Who's autodestructive art. Entwistle's wry and sometimes dark sense of humor clashed at times with Townshend's more introspective intellectual work. Although he wrote songs on every Who studio album except for Quadrophenia, Entwistle was frustrated at Daltrey not allowing him to sing them himself. He was the only member of the band to have had formal musical training. In addition to the bass guitar, he contributed backing vocals and performed on the French horn, trumpet, piano, bugle, and Jew's harp, and on some occasions he sang the lead vocals on his compositions. He layered several horns to create the brass section, as heard on songs such as 515, among others, while recording The Who's studio albums, and for concerts arranged a horn section to perform with the band. While Entwistle was known for being the quietest member of The Who, he in fact often exerted major influences on the rest of the band. For instance, Entwistle was the first member of the band to wear a Union Jack waistcoat. This piece of clothing later became one of Townshend's signature garments. In 1974, he compiled Odds and Sods, a collection of unreleased Who material. Entwistle designed the cover art for the band's seventh studio album, The Who by Numbers, in 1975, and in a 1996 interview remarked that it had cost £30 to create, while the Quadrophenia cover designed by Pete Townshend had cost £16,000. Entwistle also experimented throughout his career with biamping, where the high and low ends of the bass are sent through separate signal paths, allowing for more control over the output. At one point, his rig became so loaded down with speaker cabinets and processing gear that it was dubbed Little Manhattan, in reference to the towering skyscraper-like stacks, racks, and blinking lights.